How's it going, everyone? My name's Carpo, and in this video I'm going to talk a little bit about prophecies and Nostradamus and our expectations of the world. First off, I'm sure that somebody will be rubbed the wrong way by the title, which will probably be something along the lines of, the bullshit prophecies of Nostradamus. But let me say that, first off, I'm not here to attack prophecy or the idea that maybe that there are prophets in this world that can tell us about our future. I am what you might call a hopeful skeptic, in a way. And coincidentally enough, I watched a video this morning that summed up, in a way, what I wanted to talk about here in this video. It was from a channel that I watched often, The School of Life, but it was one about conspiracy theories versus skepticism, and it came at just the right time, because they've done quite a few other ones like that, but this one didn't teach me a single thing that I didn't already know. It just summed up perfectly how I feel about the situation. The idea that if something is taken at face value, let's say someone comes to you and says, hey, I have this book here, it's the Complete Prophecies of Nostradamus, and in here there are a lot of prophecies that have actually come true. And the person says, really? Wow, that's interesting. Well, let's look through them. And I'm not going to do that here. No, I'm not going to waste your time with reading any of this. This is the Complete Prophecies of Nostradamus. But it's the... This is the part that got me. It's the Millennium Edition. It's funny, only in recent decades has it become an issue where people were that interested in reading Nostradamus prophecies where it was printed en masse, but the idea that even if it was printed 100 years before and then there was a Millennium Edition, the idea that anything had changed between those times is kind of what gets me. Now, when I was about 21, 22, I was really into UFOs, Bigfoot, aliens, interdimensional travel, psychic powers, Reiki, healing, all the different things, remote viewing, not to even mention all the conspiracy theories and the variety of experiments our own government had done and the LSD trials. And too many things to list, all the way down to the supposed hoax of the moon landing, or the fraud of this or the fraud of that, or the conspiracy, Agenda 21, the idea to depopulate the earth. I went through a phase where I learned a lot about what I thought was true. And a lot of it was from things that I had learned in books like Behold a Pale Horse by William Cooper. I mean, I'm a very easily influenced 21-year-old kid, and here I am reading a book telling me the truth, right? So for years after that, I became fascinated with things like this, and it was only recently that I decided that I needed to make a video like this talking about things like Nostradamus. It's junk. And that sounds very arrogant, and I'm sure there are people out there who would disagree with me. There are Nostradamus scholars that, believe that they are able to translate the meanings behind these things. But here's what I've come to the conclusion of, and many other people, of course, have too. It's that none of these prophecies are ever shown before the fact of them happening. There's a term for it, there's a word, I can't remember the terminology used, but it's the idea that anybody can make a prophecy fit afterwards, after something happens. For example, the Twin Towers collapsing. Anyone can go in and find a Nostradamus prophecy foreseeing that, but unless somebody can see it a month ahead of time and say, look, Nostradamus predicted this at this specific time. Any time in history, something could happen with two towers that could be deemed to be a prophecy. In that sense, I find the prophecies useless. A prophecy that can't be used before it happens is useless in my eyes. So, and this isn't, of course, to dismiss prophecy in general. This is an idea of weighing through the options, looking at what is true and what isn't true, and being a rational skeptic, I'm often considered to be closed-minded by people. If somebody comes to me, not all people, but just the people who are mostly the conspiracy theorist type, who will come and say, have you looked into the flat earth theory? And I would respond with, yes, I have looked into it quite a bit, and I've come to the conclusion that I don't believe it. And the following comment may be, well, you haven't looked hard enough. Maybe you're too closed-minded. This isn't something that's happened once or twice, but probably a dozen or more times to me, just on the flat earth issue alone. not to mention the Illuminati, conspiracies. At this point in my life, I have fun. Even right here behind me, I have a watch. I don't know if you can see it, but it's a Freemason pocket watch that I picked up really cheap on eBay, just as kind of a joke, because, my grandfather was a master mason, and I have his apron up there with the all-seeing eye, and the lambskin apron, and his little cap with the double-headed eagle on it, and I've worn it a couple of times, and people have just said, you're one of them, you're one of them, thinking that I'm somehow involved with this giant conspiracy to dominate the earth. And this has always fascinated me, because even when you can look in a person's eyes and you can see that they're just a random guy on YouTube talking about things, the minute they start discussing something that doesn't go along with your preconceived notions of how the world operates, which are based on what you've heard from other people, all the conspiracies have been taught by other people. And, that's the thing we have to remember. It's just like religion. No matter how strongly you believe in your religion, whatever it may be, there's nothing wrong with that. But you have to admit that if you had been put on this earth without any other of mankind's inspirations, books, or any words, or let's just say you had been born alone and raised alone, you would not know that this particular religion was the right one. We were taught these things. And we were taught by others that we trusted, because we believe their ethos. The ethos means that, the value of a person's opinion. It's the Aristotelian ethos, pathos, logos. Who's saying it, what are they saying, and what method are they conveying it. And that's the pathos, and that's where the term pathological comes from, such as pathological liar. If you have good pathos, you can convince anybody of anything. And this is what religious leaders have been doing since, the beginnings. But also people have used that in the conspiracy world to try to convince us that everything's a lie, that, we're all being defrauded, and that there are all these conspiracies that are all just well known if we're just willing to just look at the evidence. But then you look at the evidence and you see that, sure, there are conspiracies out there. But no, there aren't several prophecies, there aren't every single thing that we see on television isn't telling us that the Illuminati is coming to get us. Because we can see patterns as humans. That's what we do. We seek patterns. We look for patterns. And so we tend to find them everywhere we look. An example of one of the, conspiracy type leaders in this world, somebody that I've been aware of for probably 12 years now, is Alex Jones. Now, Alex Jones was actually friends with the guy who wrote the book Behold a Pale Horse, William Cooper, that I talked about earlier, and that was in the 90s. And Cooper died, but Alex Jones basically used William Cooper's work to build off of, and kind of used it as his own at the beginning. Nobody really knew who he was, but all of a sudden, within the last couple of years, Alex Jones has become quite popular. And it just, ironically, last night, it was... of all the times in history where people claim all this truthing is supposed to come out, and now the truth is going mainstream, and alternative news is going mainstream, and you're starting to see these things happen, like guys like Alex Jones getting on mainstream television, or at least being talked about. And then yesterday there's an article, he's in court right now, trying to gain custody of his children, and his lawyer is using the argument that he is a showman, that he puts on a show, he's a persona. Well, that'll come as a surprise to a lot of his viewers who really believe the bullshit that he's spewing out of his mouth. The nonsense that he's saying, the things that he speaks, he doesn't think. And this is where it compares in my way to like prophecy, in the sense that if a person can find one grain of truth in something somebody's saying, if I sat here and told you a whole story that was absolutely true and then threw a lie into it, a lot of people would be willing to believe one lie, as long as there's enough truth wrapping it up in a nice little ball. And in guys like Alex Jones' case, it's more or less mostly just bullshit with a little bit of truth laced in. So a person can say, look, he said this and it's true. Therefore, this must be true. Everything must be true. And the same thing can happen with the Nostradamus prophecy. A person can say, look, they're talking about this Führer, this guy named, there's a section about trumpets now in the book, and they're saying that has to do with Trump, that, trumpet. Maybe so, but why wasn't it perceived ahead of time? Why weren't we aware of these things years in the past? Maybe some were, but my point being here is that I'm not dismissing prophecy, nor am I dismissing that there are some really obscure conspiracies going on out there in the world. I am saying that I would rather be a hard-headed skeptic that is open-minded than I would be to buy into every conspiracy, because a lot of folks seem to buy into every single conspiracy. They don't just let one go and take another one. I mean, a lot of people back in the early days, in say the 90s and 2000s, you know, the internet was young. The first conspiracies were Kennedy and the moon landing hoax, let's say. And most people who believe one believe the other one, and then start to believe these other conspiracies that are all tied in together. Because the person that you're hearing is telling you, you know, what you want to hear, or rather what you hope to hear, because it's exciting to see the mysteries in the world and to see that things aren't as we thought they were. I'm guilty, you know. I was a victim of that for a long time. I bought into the conspiracy realm because it was exciting, and because one aspect I'll leave in is when you look, there's nothing wrong with looking towards a future, you know, where there may be prophecies. If you're looking towards a negative future versus a positive future, there's something to be said about that. If we're waiting for the world to collapse and waiting for everything to fall apart, it's honestly can really be a reflection of our own inner angst and how we don't feel good about where we're going in our lives. And I know that because I was that way. In my 20s, I thought, I want the whole economy to collapse. I'm waiting for this whole thing to fall apart because nothing can get better in this world until everything falls apart. So I hope these prophecies are true, and I hope that, you know, the sea level rises and there's a major catastrophe because I'll be the survivor. Oh, I'm not going to be going down with the ship because I'm too smart for that. And then I got older and realized that was kind of bullshit thinking, that I'm just another person. I don't want anybody to suffer, and I just don't know which direction this world should turn. None of us do, so it's kind of easy to just throw everything out instead of thinking about it critically. So those are some of my thoughts on prophecy. I didn't really go too deep into it, and I didn't want to get into any specifics. I really just wanted to make the point of to think critically, because I know there are people out there who are on the fence, who are maybe like me, have done a lot of looking into, you know. Let me give you an example. There are people who believe that Sandy Hook massacre really happened. There are people who believe that the Sandy Hook massacre happened, but that it was set up, or that, you know, the shooting was planned. Then there are other people who believe that the people, every single person involved in it was an actor, and that nothing ever happened at Sandy Hook. And this is the difference between being suspicious of the original story and being just downright foolish. Because I'm not saying that I was there, but neither are most of the people claiming that it never happened. But there is enough ample evidence to where you have to weigh the options in your own life to see, you know, what you believe. You can go back to World War II or any of the wars where we can say maybe Hitler made it out of Germany, or maybe this never really happened. Holocaust deniers, perfect example, you know. Is it worth arguing that the Holocaust did happen? Maybe it didn't happen exactly as history wrote it. Would I be surprised? Hell no. History books are loaded with bullshit. But to use our sense, to use common sense, and there is a common sense there, and that common sense means we look at the big picture through everyone's eyes and say, what is the most likely scenario here, and why do we want to believe what we believe? So I'll get back deeper into this on another one. Probably going to run out of time here, so I'll talk to y'all later, and have a wonderful day, and always be suspicious, but always be skeptical.